Okay, welcome to my session about .NET MAUI and Blazor. My name is Hindrikes. I'm a developer, architect, working as a consultant. And I love this thing by sharing knowledge, speaking at conferences, doing a lot of YouTube stuff, not as much as the last weeks, but I will continue with that next week again. So if you're interested to see more about .NET MAUI, Blazor, and other .NET stuff, you can go to YouTube and search for my name, and you will find my channel. Also, co-organizing some conferences. We have Svetug in Stockholm, that will be in February next year, and also the online conference, .NET Frontend Day. And when we're talking about that conference, we have a website that we built with Blazor. But as you hear on the name, we are a .NET Frontend conference, so I think we need also an app. And of course, we need to do that app with .NET. So from that, we have two options. If we want to use .NET, we can go and rebuild the website from scratch using .NET MAUI and create a native UI, or we can reuse the code we already have for the website and build a hybrid app. And with Blazor Hybrid or .NET MAUI Hybrid or whatever you want to call it, it's a hybrid between MAUI and Blazor, you can do that in a really, I would say, easy way. And that is what I will show you today. I will convert that website from Blazor Web and put it into a .NET MAUI app. And I will give you some tips and tricks how to share the code to make it more reusable and more easy to work with. But first, I will go through short what .NET MAUI and Blazor is. So .NET MAUI has nothing to do with Island on Hawaii, despite the name, and it's nothing to do with the Disney character from that movie. It's just an acronym for .NET Multi-Platform Application UI, or .NET Multi-Platform Application User Interface. So that is a framework for building multi-platform apps. So you can use it for building apps for Windows, Mac OS, Android, and iOS. And the vision for them is that .NET MAUI should be the most productive way to develop native apps that perform great on any device that runs iOS, Android, Windows, Mac from a single code base. And that means that you are able to share the code both for UI and for business logic. So therefore, I like that they call it multi-platform, not cross-platform, because cross-platform has a little bit negative feel to it, because there are a lot of compromises when you're talking about cross-platform. Multi-platform is more okay. We can have this code base and we can deploy it to multiple platforms, but still have a good user experience, and it's pretty easy to access all native stuffs too. So you can run your .NET MAUI apps on all those devices. We have Windows desktop, Mac desktops, we have phones, iOS, Android, we have tablets, iPad OS and Android. iPad OS is more or less iOS, but a little bit more customized for running on iPads. And I guess the marketing people on Apple liked to call it iPad OS instead of iOS, because iOS is very tight coupled to the phones. And then, what I not mentioned yet is that we also have support for Tizen. But it's not Microsoft that developing the Tizen support, it's Samsung. But you can find that in the repository. And there are also support for Linux. It's not official support, but it's a community project that they work with bringing .NET MAUI support for Linux also. I don't really know the status of it, but the last thing I heard is that they come a long way. So Blazor, you probably know about Blazor, because they have a lot of talk about Blazor the last years, and it has been very successful for Microsoft. So, but Blazor is for web. Yeah, but you can also use it for building mobile applications, or a hybrid. And what we mean with a hybrid in this case is that we will have a web UI, but it will run inside of the app. But it will run in the native process. So it will have full access to all the native APIs on iOS, for example. And it will not be Blazor server running, it's not Blazor WebAssembly. It's like the phone or the app is the server. So there are in-memory connection instead of a singular connection that you have with Blazor server. And you cannot only use Blazor Hybrid in .NET MAUI, you can also use it together with WinForms or WPF. And that makes it possible to share your UI code for a lot of devices and applications. And you can all share components that you already have, or you can share the components you maybe have bought for your website. You can use them now in your app, and that makes it possible for you to build apps with a lot of more components available that you would have if you only build a .NET MAUI app. And the control that you will use in .NET MAUI is something called the Blazor Web View. And that is not the same as the regular web view. With a regular or classic web view, you will load web content from a server. That is not what you will do with Blazor Web View. You will just load a Blazor component that you have inside of your app. And it will use the web view for each platform. So if you run it on iOS, it will use WebKit. If you run it on Android, it will use Chromium. It's not like with Electron, where they ship the web view or web engine with all the apps. And that makes the footprint of the apps much smaller. So I think that is a good thing. Otherwise, is Electron a very similar way of thinking, but this is with .NET and not with JavaScript. So why should we use MAUI Blazor Hybrid? I would say that I have never been a fan of hybrid apps until now, because I think this is the right way to build a hybrid app. And my experience of this is also very good. Before, I won't say I never built a hybrid app before, but I have used them. And the user experience has been not that good. And as a developer, you don't have that much control on what will happen inside of an app if you load a web page, especially if you have a web page where users can contribute with content, upload text, for example. It could be a URL that takes you to a completely other page that you don't want to show in your application. So the biggest reason, maybe, is that we will have code sharing. When building a native app with, for example, MAUI, you can share a lot of code, but you are only targeting native clients for desktop and mobile. With hybrid, you can also include web in the list of platforms where you share your code between. And that is not just business logic, it's also UI code. And if you, in your company, have a lot of web developers, maybe already doing development using Blazor for websites, you can use the competence that they have, and they can start building apps. Even if they don't reuse code that they have, they can start building an app, and they don't have to learn that much new things. Of course, you need to learn about the app ecosystem with publishing and what comes with that, because that's a completely new thing if you compare the web with all the signing certificates you need for Apple, the keys that you need for Android, the app stores. There are a lot of things to learn there. But if you compare, if you need to learn both the platforms, you need to maybe learn a new language or at least a new framework. If you will go to .NET MAUI, it's much easier to get started with Blazor Hybrid, where you can use your web competence. Yeah, it's web, and web have a lot of good things. But the good thing here is that you can combine this website with the native experience in a really easy way. If you do that in a regular, maybe not a regular, old way to build a hybrid, you need to do those JavaScript interrupts. And I've tried that a few times when I did a demo application, and that was horrible experience. It took me a few days to figure out how to do it good on both iOS and Android. So, yeah. So, that was why. What about when? Should you always go with a hybrid approach? Maybe not, because if you want a native UI, of course you should not go with Blazor Hybrid, but I will give you a few scenarios when Blazor Hybrid can be a really good idea. So the first is if you already have a web page that you want to extend with a native app. Let's say that you have just released a really good web application, you're having a release party, and then the marketing people come to you and ask, why can't we download this from the App Store? Or we need to be able to download this App Store because user will find the application there. So then you have two options. Should we start over, build an app? No, we don't, because we already have this great application. So in that way, Blazor Hybrid is really great. You can just take your web component, and if you already have a good way to structure your code, it will be really easy. And then, of course, you can spice it up with some native stuff. You can add some native navigation with tab bars or flyouts. You can add push notifications that you can have in web, or at least you don't want to have them in web, because every user hates this dialogue on web pages asking for permissions to have push notification. And as I said before, Blazor Hybrid is also supporting WinForms and WPF, and that means that Blazor Hybrid can be an approach to modernize these apps. If you don't want to continue building your WinForms using that technology, you maybe have some things on your website that you want to have inside of your WinForms app. You can just take the Blazor Web View and you can integrate a few parts of it. You can start with one page, replace what you have there, and then you can take the next page and do it iterative instead of rebuilding a whole app from the beginning. It can be in good options. Of course, you need to have migrated your VPF or WinForms apps to newer version of .NET, so you are on .NET Core or .NET 7 is the current version now. So, and Blazor Web View is not only that you can use the whole application in your app, for your whole application. You can just use it as a single page. You can use it as a part of a page also. So let's say if you have built a really advanced control to visualize data for your website, and you don't want to rebuild that control for the app that you already have with, let's say, .NET MAUI, then you can just take that control, lift it into your app, and yeah, it will be like integrated in the native UI in a really good way. So, how to do this in a good way? I will show you more when we're doing a live demo in Visual Studio later, but I will just talk a little bit about the overview of the concepts first. So, what you should do, and hopefully already have done when you developed your website, is that you have components in a separate project or a separate library. That makes it really easy to share those components between application, and also between your websites, of course. But I recommend you to have the web project just as a head, and then you reference other projects where you have your actual components or pages. And you should also always try to avoid to have platform-specific code in your Razor files. And with platform-specific code, I mean code specific for web, maybe code that accesses local storage. I guess you can use that on an app too, but if you lift it into an app, you want to have other ways to store it on disk or in key chain or whatever. There are better ways to do that on an app. So to solve this, IOC is your friend. Create an interface, a service, wrap it there, and you can have different implementations per platform. So let's go to Visual Studio. And I guess that is what most of you want to see, not some boring PowerPoint presentation. So here we have the .NET Front-End Day website. I did all the mistakes when I did this website because I put everything in one single project. And I did not separate the controls, the components. So the first thing we will do here is that we'll go and create a new project. And we will do a .NET MAUI Blazor app. There are two templates for MAUI, more or less, the .NET MAUI app and .NET MAUI Blazor app. You can do both of them, but if you select the first one here, you need to do a little bit more stuff yourself. But it is possible to start with that and then decide to go with MAUI Blazor also. We can target .NET 6 because the project is not moved yet. We can call it core. Yeah, we should call it app. Okay, so let's try to add reference to the web project here. And see if we can do it that easy. When I did the mistake to not put the components in a separate library. We set that as a starter project, and then we try to build it. Oops, it will not work, because this ASP.NET Core app is not working with Mac Catalyst, for example. And if you wonder what Mac Catalyst is, that is the way Apple have to take iOS apps over to Mac. And you will see, I don't know if you see it, but it's small text, but it's the same problem for iOS. So we cannot reference a web project from an app project. And that means that to get it to work, we need to break out all the components and the pages and everything we want to share into a separate project. And I guess you think it's pretty boring to look at me moving files in Visual Studio. So I have done like the chefs on TV, I prepared a bit. So here we have a Visual Studio solution where I have created the app project and a core project. And the core project is of the type Razor class library. And that is pretty important that you create a Razor class library and not a regular class library. If you take it wrong, you can easily go to the CH file and change this SDK property here, because that's just the difference between them. This will be SDK.razor, and that makes it possible to have Razor files in it. So if we take a look here, we can see that I have moved all components and models, services, and other things that I want to share. In the best of worlds, we probably would have moved those business logic stuff to another library, but right now we have them here. So pages is the Razor files, just looks like this. And then we have also www root folder here, but I prefer to have them on the platforms, because it seems to work much easier that way when they are doing the build. And also, if you have a separate CSS for the app and the web, you can also do customizations. Of course, you can have a shared base CSS, but I recommend you to at least have one that are separate for the app and the web, so you can do changes to them if you want and if you need to. And as you can see here, I also referenced the project from both of them. So we can try to run this. We can run it first on Mac Catalyst. And now we have a desktop application based on our website. It was pretty easy to get started. Now we can start to make this more like application, spice it up with some stuff. But I want to show you a few things I did first, because you maybe have some memory caches or something you use in your web application. To make that work on MAUI, I need to, of course, install the NuGet package, but I also need to go here to the MAUI program file and add those services to the IOC. In Blazor, stuff like that is included by default. You don't need to do that, but if you want to run it in the MAUI app, you need to do it. And if we take a look at the main page, not SAML, you can see here that we have a Blazor web view, and we're loading the component with the name main. And main is a component that we will have both in the web project, and we will have it in the app project. And one thing we need to do here is that we need to go and define additional assemblies where we have Razor files, or at least where we have pages. The reason for this is when the application starts, it will scan for the page directive. As you can see, if we open, let's say index.razor, we have this page here, and then what path it will be to. It will scan for those, and that makes the router work. So if you have a router that you want to use inside of your web view, and that makes it possible to navigate, you need to do this. Otherwise, it will not work with navigation. But you don't need to have navigation. You can just load a single page or a single component into the Blazor web view if you want that. But in the case where you move a web page to an app, you probably will have some navigation already in the web page that you want to have in the app too. So that was the easy part. We have moved it to application, and in some cases this is maybe enough. Now we can go and package it and deploy it. But I want to have some native UIs in here too. So what we should do now is that we should create a tab bar, and we will create a second page where the users can navigate to the speakers page directly. So you don't need to scroll through the web page and find it and click the buttons there. You can just select it in the tab. So what we are going to do now is to create a new page. And we can call it speaker page. And then we can go back to main page, and we can copy the Blazor web view. And we replace all the content that we have there by default. And then we need to also import the namespace that we have for the components. So in this case, it just will be the root namespace. Like this. Local main, yeah, it should work, but sometimes the IntelliSense is not your friend. And to make it load another page now, we need to go and specify what URL to load. And to do that, we need to add some parameters here. But to do that, we first need to go to the main component, and we specified a parameter here, public string URL, get set, and we can also set the default path there, and we add attribute, parameter, and override parameter set. So if URL is not that, then we can do some navigation, and then we need to inject the navigation for Blazor. Inject, and this is nothing you need to configure. It's just to inject the navigation manager. So navigation. Strange name I gave it. Navigation dot navigate to, and then URL. Okay, strange, but try to build it to see if the errors are removed. Missing a semicolon there. So if you go back to speaker page here, we can give this root component a name, because the easiest way to specify parameters to the root component is to do that from the code behind. So root comp like that, and then root comp dot parameters is new dictionary of string object, and then the name of the parameter was URL, and then we can go here and check what that page have path. Okay, should be speakers, and then we should have the year. And while we don't have any speakers yet for next year's, it will be speakers 2022. Just like that. So now we have a new page that we have loaded Blazor controls into, and now we can go and create the tab bar. And to do that, we will use .NET MAUI shell. So we create a new page and call it app shell. We change the type from content page to shell. Remove the content. We go to the code behind and remove this. I don't know why they have the type there in the default template, because it's not necessary. When this is a partial class, it is enough to have it here. And now we can create a tab bar. And we can add some content, shell content, title, home, content template, and here we can load the first page, so we need to import the namespace here too. Like that. And data template, root, and then main page. Now we can copy that one and change to speakers and speaker page. So now we are almost done. The only thing we need to do is to say it should load the shell instead of the main page. So main page is app shell in the application class. Okay, let's see if we can run this, and we can run it on iOS now. Just take a few seconds to start. Of course, it's slower than it used to be when you do something on stage. Let's close the debugger and open it like this instead. Yeah, here we have it. So we have the first page, and then we have the speakers page, and the speakers are loaded. So now we have native navigation, but we have web content. For the speakers, we have on both platforms now a memory cache. That is maybe nothing you want to have in the app, because the app is, when you restart the app, the cache is gone. It's okay if you have a Blazor server app where you can share this cache between all the instances, but for an app, it's better to have like a file cache or a database cache. So my idea is now that we, for the app, should create a file cache and have the memory cache still for the web. So we go to our shared project here, and we will create an interface in the services folder. Oops. I cache service. And I already prepared that interface, so we copy it. And we paste it in here. So more or less we have two methods. We have a get and we have a save. So now we go to the app project and we need to create an implementation there. And if we want to have different implementations for different app platforms, we should place those files inside of this Android, iOS, Mac Catalyst folders inside of the platforms folder. Then it will use multi-targeting to make sure that you only get the right implementation for the platform. But now we want to share this file cache service for all the .NET MAUI platforms. So we create a new class, file cache service, and we copy that one too. And we need to go to the right instance of Visual Studio. And what this are doing now is that it's writing the things to file. And I will do it in the cache directory, because if we do it in the application directory, that we also have as an option in this file system helper, it will be part of the backups. And you don't want to have caches in backup, or at least the user don't want the cache to be backed up to iCloud or iTunes or whatever you're using for your backups. So it's pretty important to place caches in the cache directory, and this helper makes it really easy. So now we can go to the web project, and we can add another implementation of this interface, memory cache service. And we go here and copy that one too. And as you can see, this service will use the memory cache under the hood. But when we wrap it in an interface like this, it's easier for us to replace it. Of course, we could create another implementation from the iMemory cache interface also, but that had been really strange to call it memory cache and then have an implementation doing another thing. So that is what I mean in the beginning, that you should try to avoid platform-specific dependencies on in the components. So it's better to wrap everything in an interface. It will be more replaceable when you add more platforms. And even if you don't know that you will add an app later, I think it's a good practice to do like that now when you at least have the options to build an app of your website also. So now we can go to the speaker service, and we can, instead of the memory cache here, we inject iCache service. And then we can go and replace the code here. So we do our result is equal to await cache service, no, not save, get, and the type is list of speaker info. Like that, and then we can use the same key. That, and then we can check result is not null. we need a default value here also. So what should happen if there are nothing in the cache? We can return null. Okay. So we go here and change this to cache service. Save. Wait. Remove that. Okay. Now we have replaced the memory cache. We still have it down here in another method, but that's not relevant to replace it on all places, because I think that's pretty boring to look at me doing the same over and over again. And the last thing we need to do now before we can run this is that we should go to the IOC configuration and add this. So services.add, we can do that as a singleton, iCache service, memory cache service. It will be like that on the web page. And now we go to the app, to the MAUI app file, MAUI program. And this is one of the great things with .NET MAUI compared to Xamarin Forms. In Xamarin Forms, you had to add a third-party IOC provider, but you have it built in .NET MAUI as you have with other .NET Core application. So now we can try to run this and see if we will have the speakers loaded faster, at least the second time. Oops, we have an error, but that's good. Then I can show you the developer tools in Safari, how you can use that together with the iOS simulator. Unfortunately, this will not work for Mac apps yet. It works with Chrome or Edge for Android apps, and it also works in Windows app if you are on a Windows machine. But on Mac apps, it will not work right now. So what you need to do is to go and turn on developer mode, that I already have done. And then we can connect to it like this. And then we will have the web tools, so you can inspect the UI. You will have the console, and as you can see here, I forgot to add the iCache service to the IOC because I talked too much, but that you have probably already figured out. So we go here and we add it. Cache service, and now we will use the file cache service. And now we can run it again. So now it works. We have the speakers. We close the application. Start it again. And we have them here immediately. We don't have to go to the server to get them. Okay, one last thing we will do in this app, we will add a third tab, and in that one we will show the sponsors. And for that, we don't want to have the complete page as a web view. We want to have just a part of the page. So close the simulator, and we create a new page, add new .NET MAUI and the content page, sponsor page, and we can keep the vertical stack layout, and we can keep the label, but we can change the text to sponsors. Give it a bigger font, title, maybe. And we can keep those. And now we can add the Blazor web view here. So let's go and copy that one. We got the sponsor page. we don't need that name, but we can have it there because it will not affect anything. And we will have the, let's see what the name was that page was, or not a page, it's just a component. Here we have it, components, sponsors, and as you can see here, we don't have any page directive, it's just a component that you can use as a part of a page. So we need to go and add that namespace. No, not sponsors, components. Components. Okay, the IntelliSense was not good enough to make it easy to find it that way. So we do it like that instead. And now we can do components and add the sponsor component there. And what we also need to do now, I don't know why, if it's a bug or if it's a feature, but you need to set the height for the Blazor web view. I wish that it could work like all other components, that it will fill out their available space, but it are not doing that right now. So we set height request and 500. And now we can run it on Mac. No, we forgot to add the tab. We need to do that if you want to see anything. So we go to the app shell, and we copy this, change to sponsors, sponsor page. Okay, now we're ready to go. So, and here we have the application, we have a third tab, sponsors, and here we have the page. Maybe not look that good yet, but now we can start working with the colors here to make it look better. So, as you can see here, this top thing is native, and this purple stuff, that is web content. And below we have native UIN. And we can go and remove that navbar also pretty easy. Just going to the shell and say shell.navbar is visible, false, and hopefully hot reload works. No, it did not, so we need to deploy it. Hot reload usually works better on iOS than on Mac apps. And I think it even works better with .NET 7 than with .NET 6. Because I tried this earlier today in the code here I have deployed to GitHub, and then I had no problem with hot reload, so it can be a .NET 7 thing. But now it's removed, and it looks better again. And okay, that was everything that I wanted to show you today. Hopefully, I have given you some tips to make it easier for you if you want to migrate an app or if you want to build a Blazor app from scratch. If you want to look at my code, you can go to GitHub. Okay. You can go to GitHub to Hindrikes/update demo 2022, and you will find all my code. And if you do that, you will have the code and the project migrated to .NET 7 as well. Otherwise, if you want to contact me, the easiest way to do it on Twitter or LinkedIn. And as I said in the beginning, if you want to see more content about .NET MAUI and Blazor, you can go to my YouTube channel, because I add a few videos every month, often every week, but if I'm not too busy. So thank you for watching, and if you have any questions, you're welcome to ask me them.
Thank you. So if anybody has a question,
Hello, thank you very much for the presentation. It was awesome. I'm currently working with the WPF solution, and I'm migrating it to web, to Blazor. and I'm considering to use MAUI, but not sure yet. So what I'm doing is I have two hosting models. One is WPF, and I have hosting model for Blazor, for the web. And I have Razor component, Razor class library with Razor pages, and logic itself, like it is all the written code, already tested. And first of all, I have the first question. I know that the DI is working differently for the .NET Core and for the .NET and for the, I'm using the Blazor server. It is working differently in matter of scopes.
Yeah.
So for example, now the application is huge, yes? And my plan is to replace component by component. So for example, I have on the page 3 components. One will be XAML, like old code, and 2 of them it is using the Blazor web view. And the DI is working differently. Can you tell me if in MAUI it will be working better or you solve it somehow?
The question was if MAUI was ready or?
The question is, in MAUI, the dependency injection is working the same as Blazor in matter of scope, because it has different understanding of scope. So basically singleton, transient, and scoped, yes? And the scope works differently for Blazor and for .NET.
Yeah, I mean MAUI, and that's an application that you deploy to the clients, and it's running inside of there. So if you run it on a web, are you using Blazor server or?
Yes, I'm using the Blazor server.
So of course there will be some difference there, and that's why you've set up IOC per platform. You don't share that code, so you can make it good for all the platforms. I don't know if that was the question, answer on your question, but...
Thank you.
Anyone else?
You're also welcome to come here after and have your questions. I will try to ask them and answer them.
Okay, so thank you.
Thank you.